coupons, you remember? In 2005, it begins a kind of couponization when some of the national industries are privatized. He'll hand out sort of coupons to everybody to have a sort of like a stock owning in this nationalized industry. So that's totally within his purview to do. It's just it's unsustainable how much of the state industry can he sell off to continue to buy those votes, right? So I think what's been missing, right, from Mousavi's platform, what I think would actually win him support is if he had something meaningful to say to the rural poor in Iran or to the urban poor in Tehran, right? I actually have a social program that will meet your needs better than Ahmedinejad, a jobs program, an infrastructure development program, some kind of way to alleviate the skyrocketing food prices that makes sense. But he's not willing to do that because a section of capital that he's connected to wants a completely different pattern for life in Iran, which is sort of free markets run rampant, the rich get rich off of the privatization of national industry.
So basically, what's going on right now is very much, all these demonstrations are very much political, and like you said, there were two main fronts. So right now, you think that if the politics and the economics can kind of get interwoven together is when there will be a much more successful movement?
I think there'll be a much more successful movement when we get an alternative to Mousavi. I think at a minimum that's what it would take, is somebody more radical than Mousavi posing himself as leader of that movement. And that may be a social program, it may be political, it may be we want more democratic rights. Somebody who says openly and proudly, if Karoubi comes out and says down with the Vilayat Faqih,
expectations on a man who was actually selected by Congress.
Yeah.
What do you expect from the guy? If he was approved by the supreme leader, then he's obviously not going to do too much for a major reform movement.
And he was also one of the founding revolutionary guards.
No, he was the first prime minister, right, in 1980.
Exactly.
He's the first prime minister. He helps lead the Iran-Iraq war. He's not a guy who is in favor of demolishing the system that he helped build and put into place.
So I had a comment and question. You mentioned the Vilayat Faqih, and I didn't know that until a few months ago, but there was two referendums for Iranian constitution. The first one was the one after the revolution, and then I don't know, was it a year after that or more than that? There was a second one that added the Vilayat Faqih, and there was like another referendum. And Mohsen Kadivar is a cleric and a reformist who believes in the Islamic.
Was he just here?
He was talking in UT during the summer, and he's someone that supports the Islamic Republic in the form of government, but not the way it's run by Ahmedinejad. And according to him, he supports a referendum whether people, if they want to kick the clerics out. He says, I will just do my work through educational work, but other things. But he was saying that he voted in the second Iranian constitution, and a lot of other, religious people against the second the referendum. And my question was about if you can comment on the relationships. You described Ahmadinejad's economic policy and the way that they're all trying to privatize the country, and if you can comment on the new growing relationship between Iran and South American countries who are exactly moving in the opposite direction. Venezuela, Bolivia, and all other growing countries that are moving towards socialism, and at the same time they're getting in the closer, creating a closer alliance with Iran.
Yeah, I think that Chavez has made a cagey political calculation to his detriment, which is that he's backing, I don't know, there are many reasons why he's backing Ahmadinejad, none of which are justifiable, right? He's an enemy of the United States like he is, they're an oil country like his is, and they've got some shared economic policies when it comes to running the state. It's a very bad decision in my opinion. Chavez could be leading a much better sort of social movement internationally. The guy stands up inside of the United Nations and says, Bush is the devil, and he holds up a copy of Chomsky's book and tells everybody to read it. He's got some spine to him, right? But when it comes to the foreign policy, it's been quite bad. I think that what has happened is because U.S. hegemony has basically dictated how everybody can do trade in the world today. countries that are moving to the left and are outside of the orbit of the United States hegemony or unwilling to hitch their wagon to the United States have got to rely on, I think, some unsavory partners, and that's more or less been, I mean, it's what Cuba did when, after the Cuban Revolution, allied themselves to some various nefarious, outfits. I think he's pursuing a similar policy. I hate to say that it's because of duress. That may account for some of it, but I also think it's very wrong-headed on his part. I don't know if that answers the question.
I guess so.
I think it's dumb.
The question is, do you know anything about the project here?
No.
Okay, Ahmedinejad, following the project here, there is a during the Janati Yazdi.
Okay.
I thought, yeah, these guys, even Khomeini had a strong problem with these two guys, especially Janati, because they believe, they believe to do anything, provide some, they do, they try to bring Imam Zaman to the other earth.
Great.
And even most of the mullahs, even I think Khomeini, they are opposite this.
No, I've heard this theory before, that Ahmadinejad is more or less in
And
some
I've heard
small
that-
cult which has some crazy ideas
Yeah,
about
exactly.
religion.
I heard that this guy is trying to replace his leader Janati instead of Khomeini. I mean, have you heard that?
I don't follow Iranian politics that closely to know all of the political gossip. That may very well be the case. I honestly don't know. I just think that Ahmadinejad, while he does definitely have some great. Have you ever seen this video that was circulated right after the election where he's sort of saying that I feel God's spirit, he's commanding me to take over the country. It was really sort of on the level of Bush believing
The
that
Bush
God told him-
version of
Right,
speech.
right. This is very similar things, but I have no doubt that he has some crazy religious ideas. I tend not to put a whole lot of stock in the conspiracy theory version of some small religious group is maneuvering him around, because I think that it's a too carefully calculated move on their part, right? The problem for Ahmadinejad is that if he goes to straight privatizing of the industries inside of Iran, the people around him are not rich enough to outcompete Rafsanjani's clique. They have far more capital at their disposal. So he's got to basically do it in a way which allows his friends to come to control over these state industries. So backroom dealing, privatizing with the no-bid contracts, etc. And that allows people like the Revolutionary Guards and the Siege to take over these things. Whether or not that's in the full design of these two people who have a different set of ideas about how the Mahdi comes back or whatever they imagine, I honestly don't know. But I tend not to put a whole lot of stock in people like that, because most people I imagine believe that they're crazy.
Yeah, they are
Yeah.
crazy. Not almost all the people. But,
Right. Ahmadinejad also crazy, so I can see why people are attracted to that idea. But I think that there's something a little bit more complicated happening here, which has more to do with the structure of the Iranian state than it does with, the religious conspiracy.
Well, the group is talking about the Hojatiyah. It was founded, I think, around Mossadegh's time, but the beliefs of the group is that the Imam Mahdi is going to come at a time when there's enough chaos and destruction in the world. So their belief is actually like, we don't want a strict government that enforces morality. We want a government that run by people who are religious, but lets the population fall to vice so that the time of the Mahdi can come. And for that reason, a lot of people say, well, Ahmadinejad does buy into a lot of this Imam Mahdi coming back, but at the same time, it's part of the Islamic government and trying to enforce morality, so it doesn't seem likely it's part of the Hojatiyah. That's been, for the most part, dispelled. But one of the reasons is because he places a lot of emphasis on the Imam Mahdi, like the thing he said at the UN speech, and his spiritual advisor, Yazdi. They actually have a bunch of his books at the PCL of the UT, so. But he says in his philosophy that we've diverged from the 1979 revolution, and it says we've founded a semi-Islamic state, but to get a completely Islamic state, we can't have elections, because God didn't elect the prophets, and he didn't elect the imams.
Does God get to vote?